It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey everybody, I am Cathey Armillas.
And I am Marc Williams. Welcome to It's About to Go. It's about to go down, but really on this episode, it's about to flow. Because we are here with Coach Ann Rivera. High performance mindset coach, always talked about activating. She'll tell you more about that. Activating your flow state. And we're loving the idea that the flow state is always in flow. And that means so many different things from the way you put this message and this energy out into the universe. So first of all, Ann, welcome to It's About to Go Down.
Nice. It is an honor to be here with the two of you. I mean, I just recently got to know you both and was just blown away that I now have you in like my friend circle.
Well, you know, my nickname for you, Ann, is there's nothing average about Ann.
Oh, I love that. That's a long name, but I'm going to start calling you that, Ann. There's nothing average about you, Ann.
But Ann, tell us, what's this whole flow thing about? And why do people need to hear about the flow state? And why are you the one to talk about this whole flow state?
You know, I've been having a lot of conversations with people recently, like just in Trader Joe's, when I'm at the store, like I coach and help people about flow state, but something has opened recently where I've just wanted to have more and more organic conversations about where people access their flow state. Because high performance is in my DNA. So I come in like I seek it, like I want it. I want to optimize my life from start to finish, day to day, to find how often I can drop into flow. And it doesn't have to be that peak, like when I was a professional volleyball player. Like there'd be moments where I was in the matrix. I just knew what was happening before it was going to happen, and just my natural athletic ability, just the attunement with intuition of like forethought of like knowing what I was going to do. Those are those peak flow states, right? We think of professional athletes or artists, leaders, CEOs, the ones that like can somehow access, but that's not what it's all about. It's not that just peak that's reserved just for the elite. And so I've been trying to find and have a lot of conversations to find where do people find their flow day to day. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know and they can't identify it. But after a little bit of a conversation, they're like, oh yeah, when I'm gardening and I just lose sense of time, when I'm playing with my granddaughter, when I'm rock climbing, when I'm riding my bike, right? And it's just, there's different layers of flow, and that's what's fascinating. So I feel like I'm doing community research too, to not just help people access it in like a coaching realm, but more in just community impact of having conversations and helping people realize it's more readily accessible than you think.
I love that so much, because I do think when most people hear it, they think, ooh, there's like non-flow and then there's flow. And I love that you have made it accessible to people, because you don't always have to be in that peak. Oh, immediately I was like, mini flow, layers of flow. I love this. Like, how could and it makes it seem like I already felt really motivated, Anne, to be like, oh, I could access flow. I could leave here, go work on a project that I'm working on, and I don't have to, it doesn't have to be that big thing. I can just have a little moment of flow, however that looks. So I love that. Tell me more about how you figured that piece out, because I feel like that's super important. I think that people think of flow as like the full on, I'm a professional athlete at the highest level.
I think it has to do with the psychology of optimal experience. It's just, how do you feel joy more often? Because flow is truly like a portal of joy. And so there's like little droplets of it throughout the day, but are you piecing them together and acknowledging that, oh, there's my flow. There's my flow in making dinner with my family, where I had all these pots going at the same time and the oven, and I was chopping and I was still engaging with my daughter. And it was just felt good. Like I had my vibe going. That's flow. That's flow. When I'm giving a talk on stage, that's recently where I really find my flow, where I have a whole script or I have the ideas I want to say and I just drop into it. And I'm just standing in front and it just works through me. There's my flow. Like I go on walks in the morning. I try to carve 30 minutes of like intentional flow, where I'm trying to identify birds I hear and like find the squirrel, because it's almost like I'm exercising the muscle, because your mind needs to be quiet. It's like effortless effort. So you're almost training your brain to drop into it more often, that you don't have to have this perfect setting in order for it to happen. You kind of cobble together little moments throughout the day, but how can you make that happen more and more often?
He had to warm up before he asked you that question.
And here's what I'm wondering. What have you noticed, either in your own life, your observation with athletes and everyday people? What are people struggling with that makes getting into that intentional flow space or that daily flow space so necessary right now?
Like what's preventing it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm wondering what are we struggling with? Like what kind of problem is going on? Or maybe what kind of trend do you see going on in humanity, in society, that it's like, listen, this has to stop. And the answer to stopping it is flow.
So I almost think of it like flow state is like a doorway with locks on it. And so there's things we do that lock away the flow state, but then there's actions we do that open it up. And so the things that lock it or block it, which I see across, like with all my clients, I work with a lot of athletes. And so it's really easy to catch it in an athletic setting. But a lot of, business leaders and CEOs and creatives. So then the top things that I see that are preventing people from getting in their flow, number one, perfectionism, because it's a sneaky snake. It's a double-edged sword. And so there's then not enough, never satisfied. Well, it's really hard to find flow if you're never satisfied with what is. So if me going on my walk in the morning and I'm just listening to birds, and when I'm done, I'm satisfied that I found my flow just because I walked, I don't have to judge it. And so there's some people out there that have that perfectionist thinking. It's never about the progress. It's always about doing it right or doing it better. That prevents flow. The second thing I see is negative self-talk. It's almost like if you could have like a little printer that printed out of your ear hole at the end of the day, and it actually like had everything you thought on it. Interesting, right? And you looked at that data. If say you put that into AI and you're like, assess my mindset based on all my internal thinking today, where would I fall on, accessing my flow state? And so a lot of people, some people say it verbally. They have self-deprecation as part of their personality, or sarcasm as part of their personality, and they verbally say it. But so many people have crazy negative self-talk. That's part of what I help people do, is pull that out, reflect it back, and look at it. Is that serving you? Because you're firing and wiring a way of thinking that is not accessing the confidence and the flow state that you want, the joy, the state of joy that you want to cobble together in pieces. So that perfectionism, the negative self-talk, lack of purpose, when people are disconnected from their purpose. So they might be in a job where by this point, it's not working for them anymore, but they're still doing it. It's very hard to find your flow when you're out of alignment with really why you're showing up and doing things. And I think the fourth thing is unrealistic expectations. So think of a creative who is used to making incredible art pieces. And so they get started, but it's like they want it to look a certain way, or they have an outcome they're hoping it's going to look like, and then it doesn't look like that. And so they drop out of the flow because they have unrealistic expectations of what something should look like. So these seem to be the tendencies I've seen where people are blocking their own flow, but they don't realize that there's like these 4 horsemen. It's like these 4 things that are really keeping people blocked, or the expectation that flow state needs to feel a certain way, or it needs to look a certain way. Or my friend John, he looks like this when he's in his flow. It doesn't look like that for me, like judging what yours looks like. And so people just lose interest in trying to access it more regularly.
Interesting.
Wow. And what I love about this is you started by saying that we could find little flow states, everywhere. There's lots of different places, which already like my mind started thinking. And then you gave these 4 awesome things: perfectionism, negative self-talk, lack of purpose, and unrealistic expectation. Like what a great way to be looking at flow. I wonder what has been some of the ways that you help people find how they could like do little tiny tap in practice of flow? Because you've given a couple scenarios, but what's the best way to access that?
Yeah, usually I start with a conversation where I want somebody to tell me about, like, give me the last time that you felt like time dilated, where it's like that effortless effort. You just dropped into it. Tell me about it. And so then when they talk, it's just like, that's just where I hear things. They just ping for me. And so that I'm able to extract maybe what their values are through that story. Like what's the most important thing in their life? And so maybe that's creativity. Maybe that's being grounded. Maybe that's movement in body. And so you're able to pull out what those core things that really matter to people. And then every day, like I will write out what my 3 are, and then I write actionables that I intend to do that day to align with them. So being grounded, one of those is one of mine. And so that's why I walk for 30 minutes. I take actions that align with the values of who I am and who I want to be. And so the more I'm doing that, the more I'm opening that door, that portal to the flow, to the joy. That's one thing. Proactive confidence is another. And so like finding confidence that I can control. So not looking for Marc to tell me that I did a good job, but instead the things that I know that I can manage and control that build my confidence within myself. And so I know what those are. And so I take those actions. So I would help people identify what are the things within you that build confidence that don't rely on anybody else or anything else but you, and do those regularly, right? And so these are kind of the factors that activate flow state.
Yeah, I love it. Activate. Marc, I want to play a game. I have to. We have to do it.
I knew it.
We have to play a
I knew it.
And sometimes on our show we play a game, but you set us up with a perfect thing. Is like, when's the last time we'll all answer the question, when's the last time we were in flow and how did that feel? And you're probably more aware of being in flow than Marc and I at the moment. So this will be, I think, good for Marc and me, and then maybe also everybody watching. I'll go first because I pitched up the game, but when she was saying it, I was like, ooh, it would be great to even identify the last time we felt like we were in flow. So for me, it was on Sunday, and Marc, you already know about this, but Anne, you don't. I have been I probably have about 5 books that I started writing over the years, but there's one book that I've been writing for the last couple of years, and I have been like outlining this, like I've actively been like outlining this book, not in just a very passive way, but like, oh yeah, this might be the structure, this might be what I put in. I woke up on Mother's Day and just the creative like flow just popped into my brain. I was in the shower and I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of the shower. I got to like write this down. I got to like, and I started writing and I wrote like 4 chapters. I wrote the preface. Came up with the entire structure, which I believe was the most important part. Anyway, I was totally in flow. Nothing could stop me. I was like there writing and it was really good. And it wasn't something that I intended. So Mark, it'll be interesting and Anne to see if that one just hit me. It hit me. So
Well, first I want to identify, I listened to one of your previous podcasts that had to do with water. And you said about being in the shower and being close to water.
Yes. You heard that.
Right? It calms the nervous system. Yeah. And something about the water flowing, we're not having to take any action but like soaping ourselves. Showers are a great place to like activate the flow, like lures.
Yeah, negative ions are there, so it's great. Yes, you remember that, Anne. That's awesome. Okay, well then that's what it kicked it into gear.
That's cool. All right, so 2 things come to mind for me. Not the last time, but the most memorable time is I'm standing on stage in Malaysia giving this speech called Short on Confidence. I don't know where I was. Like I can tell you every time I tell this story, like the words were coming out, the body was expressing, but I was having like an out of body experience.
Wow.
Right? Like I was on so automatic that even I can't comprehend what was going on in those minutes when I was delivering and sharing that message. Time, I wasn't aware of anything. I just know it started and I went for it, right? But I said 2 things come to mind, and I guess one of the most recent was I was on a business trip and I decided to go to the gym. And I always like to do like a whole walking routine on the treadmill. For the first time, and I love to listen to music, but for the first time, I pulled up the music on my phone and I went to lyrics. And so as I was walking, I was reading the lyrics. And it took my mind off of speed and walking. Like there was something about the combination of listening, reading, walking that it was on another level for me. And so now I'm doing it all the time. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. You know, and when you were speaking about that, what came to mind for me is, how did you discover the daily activities that activate your flow? Because I think a lot of people who are fascinated by tapping into, what you call it, Cathey, little flow states or daily flow states, right? Like, I think in order for people to get into that flow state, you open up a can of worms right there. You activated a can of worms right there. Like, how does someone discover the daily activities that can activate their flow?
Wait, before you answer that, Anne, because that's a great question, Mark. But I want to hear Anne's. I want to hear Anne's. Like, she didn't answer.
Oh, yes.
I'm excited to hear hers, so I want to hear her answer, either her last one or a memorable one.
Yeah, well, it's on my mind all the time. And one of my themes this year is synergy and partnership. And so I've been working on finding the flow state with my husband, because flow, it doesn't have to be individual. I watch you two, you have a flow state together that is a beautiful thing to behold. That is why you are friends. That is why you do what you do, is because there's a synergy between the two of you where you're each rising within your identities of who you are and what you bring to the table. And then you so beautifully weave that together. And so that's the beauty of like flow state doesn't have to be just yourself. It can be with somebody else. Even animals have it. Think of the birds flying in a flock. They're in their flow state, right? And so it's like, for me, so then I keep dropping into it with my husband, and he knows, I nerd out on this and talk about it all the time. Like I have this little bag of Post-its, because every time I talk to somebody new, I write down their word that identifies flow and then what they were doing. And so then I'll tell them, I'm like, I was at Michael's and I talked to the lady at the checkout counter, and she told me that retail is her flow state because she loves working at Michael's, because she helps people's like creativity come to life. She finds solutions for them. So being at work at Michael's is her flow state. And so then I'm constantly telling them, because every day I'm having conversations organically just out in the community. So they're always talking about it. And so he's talking about his, we're talking about ours as a family. With like us and the kids, we have like this incredible flow that we sometimes drop into that's so unique and tangible. I feel like I'm in it a lot, but the peak for me recently is I go to ecstatic dance. Now I've danced with both of you, and it was
yes, you have.
Return of the Mac. Right? So there's this group called Ecstatic Dance, and they're like in a lot of different cities, and they're at the Boys and Girls Club, and at night for 2 hours, and it's like non-alcoholic, not like, it's like a safe space. There's a DJ, and they have like, it's dark with these little lights in the room, and they take you on a journey musically. And so you start meditating on the floor. And then as your body's it's intentional. It's to help you drop out of your mind and let your body lead, and then dance like nobody's watching. You both would love it.
Oh my God, I want to do it now, like tonight.
Sometimes there's songs where the whole room finds their flow, and everybody's like almost breaking their faces with smiles and like jumping up and down and looking at each other and just like dancing however you want to dance. You could be doing the silliest, most ridiculous thing and nobody cares. And so I find recently that is the main way that it's like a conduit. I get downloaded with the best ideas. I get like the cache of thoughts in my mind releases like the trash on your desktop. It gets released through movement and through music and through being like awake, but not thinking. Because I'm an ideator, I'm a doer, I'm a hustler, and I need to stop sometimes when I'm not like just sleeping and actually be present and listen. But that's why I carve out the 30 minutes in the morning, because that's the only time this body stops trying to come up with ideas. And so I think through this ecstatic dance, and for sure they have that in Portland.
I looked it up. I looked it up.
Yes. So I did it outside TEDx because they had the earphones on. You could put and do the dance. And so I was like, oh, that's my jam. So I went out there.
I gotta go, you guys. I'm gonna go do this. So no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, ecstatic dance NYC just came up.
But I do
We've never had somebody on our show where we both looked something up while we were talking to them. So this is new, and
you started something, and
you just started something. That's a cool. I love that, and just like a cool way to look at the flow too from different perspectives. That's awesome.
You know, I just want to give light to this because I would not want anybody to miss what you ultimately said. You ask someone for the word that identifies their flow. And there is a golden simplicity in that, Anne, that I just want to uplift. Even as you said it, and it's funny you brought up dance. I went back to our time in Portland and us starting this pop-up dance party. And I'm like, wait, that right there was the last time I was really in flow, like really in flow. And I was like, oh, I think my flow word is dance.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of people who are listening to you, thinking about what that word is that identifies their flow. Um, I think that becomes an activity. I think it becomes something that now I can start to identify things attached to that word that will allow me to activate my flow state.
Yeah. So I did a Bend Help Fair this past weekend, and I had a booth, which was kind of different to be like, oh, I'm a high performance coach and I have a booth. and luckily I had a hype girl with me who did, because I don't really like the salesy part. And so she did a lot of the like, scan the QR code, do this. Because I realized all I want to do is engage all people authentically at this fair to find out what their flow is. And so every person that came to my booth, I asked them that question. And then I had these gold stars and I'd write their word. And then I had clips going all around my booth where then I clipped their star on there with the word that identified their flow state. So my whole booth was filled with
flow.
Whether that's clarity, that's balance, that's, liquid universe. That's like, there's like 3 80-year-old ladies and they're like trying to think about like what their flow is. And then they're coming up with their word. And then I write it on there and put it up on the walls. It was just such a cool experience to get people to like, oh yeah, that's when I feel that way. But you know what I did? I did a little deep dive thinking about the two of you and the amount of time that I spent with you both, which was about a cumulative of like 2 days and a quarter.
Yep.
And you live so big and so out loud. And like, that is my zone of just observing and pulling out flow state. So here is what I've identified for each of you of what I see as your flow state. From what I know.
I know, exactly.
Okay. So Marc, since the moment we met, I felt lit up by your energy. Anybody that spends time with you knows that. You have this rare, almost like electric presence, the way you see people. You really see people. It is a gift. When you listen, it feels like every cell in your body is tuned into the moment. And this makes people feel safe and valued and heard. You bring out the best simply by being fully present. And honestly, I feel like you could read the back of a cereal box and I'd be moved to tears. Like the way that you express and you pause. Your like powerful presence, your flow state is your presence. It's your power and it's unforgettable.
Thank you.
Oh, I could not agree any more than I do.
Thank you. Wow.
Right?
That's
okay,
so
Cathey.
All right.
Watching you is like watching a joyful circus ringmaster who also happens to be a strategist and a soul whisperer. You are coaching TEDx speaker, running a skills academy, hosting a dinner, and somehow still making every single person feel known and welcome. I didn't know anybody, and I felt like I was immediately welcomed into your inner circle of friends, and you radiate authenticity, humor, and connection. And your flow state is creative leadership through connection. You're like dancing between structure and spontaneity, and you make it look effortless, and your shoe game is off the hook.
Oh, thank you, Anne.
Dead to rights. Dead to
Oh.
rights. Wow. Wow.
That's so on. I can't even, like, even the thing about myself, I would have never described myself that way. And I was like, wait, that's true. So good, Anne. Thank you for that gift.
And do you ever have people do for themselves what you just did for us?
Mm-hmm.
Do people do for themselves?
Yeah, like, I mean, what you just shared was through your own flow of being so super observant. And I'm just wondering, like, you fed into us. Do you ever have people do that for themselves, observe themselves, and identify what their own flow is?
I think that's my expertise is I pull it out of people and then I weave it back, but I often record it for them. So like what I did for you both is then I will weave it into the version of them as their best selves. And maybe we do a time shift where it's now May 2026. And then I future play it. And then I create the story of this is what your life looks like. And then I weave in all the things that they embody as their best selves. So like you're doing this every day. You are, and I create and weave that in, and then they listen to it daily. So then they start embodying it themselves because it's easy to forget or to do it for a week, right? Or you can hear what I said today, but then you might forget in a month, like, yeah, that's right. I'm the ringmaster of
of connection and creativity and leadership. Yeah, totally.
And Marc, it's interesting that you said like the observation piece because I've been reflecting on like I played professional volleyball in Europe for 5 years. And an interesting piece of like my story that I'm trying to figure out how to weave into the flow state or the type of talk that I do in the future. And a big interesting piece is that, I thought I couldn't learn languages. I thought I wasn't smart in school, really struggled with that. And then I got a contract to play in Switzerland. And since I already decided I couldn't learn languages, I never tried. I literally didn't try.
Wow.
And I lived for 2 years where hardly anybody spoke English. And so I became an expert at body language and reading people and almost creating stories of what I think's going on. And so in a lot of these European countries, you'd have dinners that last like a god awful amount of time. Or it'd be like 4 hours that everybody be talking and people wouldn't be translating. And I would just be sitting for 4 hours and I would just drop into a zone of making up exactly what was happening at the table, what they're talking about. Oh, I can see the eyes there to there. Oh, look how his face frowned. Look. And I learned how to read people really well from that experience and being so isolated and so lonely. And I would just write in my journal, like, to me, from me. And I would just reflect on like coaching myself every day to be able to suit up and show up and be my best self without having communication with really anybody around me. And it was late 90s. So I didn't have a cell phone. I had to go into town to like rent a phone. There was no internet. I couldn't Google, like I couldn't translate things that way.
Yeah.
And same, I went and played in Spain. And the first year I lived there, I did the same thing. And it was like 3 years of just choosing to be stuck, almost sabotaging my potential because I decided I couldn't learn languages. And so that's what led, I think, to a piece of what, creates that observation where I love sitting in the room with all of the people with the speaker skills and just taking it in and log away and log away. Like I could identify everybody's flow state in the room by the way they were communicating and the things they were saying throughout the weekend.
Oh, what a gift though, what a gift from a thing that was a hindrance for you because of, this thought that you couldn't learn a language. Mark, so Anne, we had a session yesterday that Coach Alexina, which I don't know if you've met her, but she ran a session yesterday that Mark had already run, and it was called the Authenticity Advantage. And she did what she said, remix. She remixed it and she added something that blew all of our minds away. And what you're saying, I saw it applied in the room yesterday. So she said, you can be in an inauthentic voice, or you can be in an authentic voice. And then you can be in an authentic but audacious authentic voice. So she challenged us all to like level up to this audacious voice. Oh my gosh, you could see everybody in the room become audacious, and you could see it was an audacious version of themselves. So it was almost like they unlocked their audacious flow right there in the room, and all it took was her just like a little bit pushing us, right? Like, hey, what would it look like if you spoke audaciously? So
Mm.
don't you think that happened yesterday, Mark? Like everybody's flow was opened. It was wild.
It was a game changer because you could just see the difference. And I spoke about how that audacity advantage was probably even more powerful for that inner voice. Remember, you were talking about that earlier, and like there's a lot of negative self-talk. I love this activity, by the way. I don't know who would take you up on the challenge, but if you took all of the different things that you said to yourself in the day and took 5 minutes to just type it in AI, I would be curious for people to really reflect
You like
on how it's coming across. But this audacity advantage, this flow talk, this flow speak for yourself, I'm very fascinated by, you talked about having a hype person with you. I wish almost everybody
Mm,
could have that
yeah.
hype flow voice,
Ooh, I love
right?
that.
And what would be that hype flow chant, cheer, hype? Like, what would it be? I could just see you, Anne, right now with all of the different people you work with, like take a few moments and just write it out, right? Like what would that flow voice sound like and what would that flow voice say? And play that on repeat, right? Have that on rewind.
Rewind.
Well, I have to show you my best self, because that's what I do is I help identify my best
Oh,
self, right? So that's me. And so I'm showing here an image that was designed by an artist. And so it's me as my best self. And so then I do that with some clients too, or I'll have the artist design it, because then you have a choice. And it's very visual, right? I have a choice. Which voice am I going to listen to? The one that's unapologetically, fearlessly owning her space, that has the audacious voice to speak her truth and own it. Or I have the negative self-talk. You can't learn languages. You're not good enough. They don't want to hear what you have to say. You're shining too bright, right? I always have a choice, that voice, or I call it the shitbird. Remember, Mark, the shitbird? The shitbird's my like negative self-talk that I designed in 1997 that still applies, because it's that negative voice. And when I don't do the things to take care of myself, the shitbird comes and roofs on my shoulder.
hmm.
When I do the actions that tend to myself, I access my flow, I'm aware, then my best superhero self, right? That's the one that shows up. That's the one that takes the lead.
Such an interesting. I'm going to throw another weird. Okay, this is a weird thought. Okay, but follow with me because Mark, you know this about me. So John, and now a lot of my family, I have a nickname, Anne, and it's called Mini Horse. Right, it's my nickname, and it came from a story where I just said sometimes I feel like a little miniature horse, and I'm in the bottom of a barrel that has oil in it, and I'm trying to get out. And so John's like, "Did you just say mini horse? That is so you." And so this every time John calls me mini horse and he says, "Oh, you're doing mini horse things," it's always about my loving nature where I'm like out doing my creative, like whatever. It's almost like this nickname for me had been, it embodies when he says you're doing mini horse things, we all know what it means. Like you're being a mini horse right now, you're mini horse things. I wonder if everybody needs to find that, like, what's that playful thing for everybody? Like, because I was thinking about my fly guy. Mark, when you said that, I'm like, who's my fly guy? Like, who's my, what would be my hype person that would be following me around? Or what's that persona, like the shepherd that you said that, like, not the good thing, but
I even
what?
have my drawing there. Remember I told you I have an image of this bird on top of a pile of poop across through it. So that's where AI is a great tool. So like I utilize that when I work with people. We identify what's the negative self-talk, what are the things it's saying, literally, what are the words it's saying, what's the best self. Then we craft and design it on AI. So I'll have a screen in my room and we'll like play with it until we find the one, then we print it. And I like them to be on their laptop or their computer to remind them. You always have a choice. And then you have the voices and the words that say the shitbird says, which mine tends to say, hustle more, be more extraordinary, don't be ordinary. So it's like a double-edged sword. You're like, not average Anne. Well, that's the piece. Sometimes I go too big and I'm juggling it all. And that tends to be the shitbird for me. And so when you know what the words are that it says, and then when you're thinking it, you're like, uh-oh, that's not me as my best self. So it's cool. I like the visuals to create them. Then they stick.
I love that too. And I love what you also just said and tapped upon. I think a lot of people can tell you the words that they hear themselves saying that tear themselves down. There's an entire script. Like, I don't even think you have to ask anybody. What do you, when you're on your worst and you're self-doubting, you're imposter and you're shitbirding and all that, like, what are the words you hear? And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, people could probably bat off word for word what that script is.
Mm-hmm.
I question and I wonder on the flip side, if people have their flow script ready on the other side. Do they know all the words? Do they know exactly what to say to themselves in that moment? Because I love how you just batted off some of that, that flow script. And so, yeah, I'm fascinated by that idea.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but there usually has to be a reset, because if you're in the negative side or the shitbird side, you can't just shift yourself right into best self. There's going to be a pathway in between, right? There has to be catching it first. You almost have to battle it first, where you have to question it. Like, is that true? Can I be certain that it's true? A little Byron Katie there, right? And who would I be without that thought? And that's where the power comes in. Who would I be without that thought? And then when you flip it and dig in of who would I be without it, then you start to shift, like the neural pathways are like trying to open up into the best self. Otherwise, you've fired and wired too much of the negative stuff. It's so strong, it's really hard to break out of it. That's where people get stuck. They're like, I know I have this voice, but I don't know how to get to the other side.
Yeah. It's like I have to get in a fight with myself in order to get rid of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a transition of flow.
That is so cool, though. I love that. I love what you asked, Mark, because to me, I would be asking myself when I'm sitting in my spaces where I'm like, ugh, I'm down and I feel gross. And I'm like, I know what my state looks like when I'm speaking on a stage and I feel very much in flow and I feel great. And when I'm sitting there, nothing makes me, like you said, there's no transition into it, but at least to know, at least to identify some of the things is even helpful, Mark. And I like that. And that's why I'm even going to think of like, I'm going to call mine my fly guy. Like mine's going to be my fly guy. Like I have this like, this like hype person here that's like, yo, remember this, remember what Anne said about you. She's not wrong.
Oh, mm-hmm.
I love that so much. And your work is so much more. I love that we have gotten into this because I think that when people think flow, it's our tendency to make assumptions based off of things that we already know. And I bet you a lot of people watching probably if they heard, oh, she's a performance mindset coach, she's going to talk about flow. I already know what that's going to be about. And we've definitely transported into somewhere totally different.
I just wanted to add this because you said you're always like finding different ways to introduce this flow state. Like you can talk to athletes or you could talk to non-athletes, and you're always just trying to find a way. And everyday flow is so applicable on the court, but also in the boardroom, also at the dining room table, also in the emergency room, right? Even in a school, right? Because I think when people hear flow state or you're in the zone, they always think athletes.
Yeah.
And what I'm appreciating, Anne, is you've taken this beyond the sport, beyond the athlete. And I think so many people out in this world who are leaders, working with teams and groups that really want to get their members to get into the flow. They're not calling it. They're not calling it that. They need to be activated with you, Anne. They
Yep.
need to be activated with you. You are so much more than just a performance mindset coach for athletes. You are a high performance mindset coach for everyday people.
Yeah.
Love that.
Oh, Mark, you said everyday flow too. I love that. That's a
Well,
cool.
that's what Ann talked about. I mean, even going on a walk, right?
I
Like, who would
yeah.
think that? Like, just go outside and go for a walk. Lay down for 10 minutes on the grass. If it's not dirty, you might not want to do that in New York, but that's a whole nother topic. Right. Although I've done it, but that's another topic. Right. But I love the idea of figuring out one, what's that word that identifies your flow? What are these activities, like these daily activities that you could be doing to activate your flow, right? And what's the imagery of your shitbird self and your best self? Fire, and fire. We talk about firing up,
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah. So I think it was Goethe in like the 1700s, German guy who identified Rausch, I think it is, like Rausch maybe, and that is the overflowing with joy. And like that was one of the first people that identified flow as a thing.
Mm,
And it meant at that time overflowing with joy. I kind of see it as like just full presence with something in that moment where time just falls away.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. But there's so many other really cool components to flow because you could be super productive, you could be super kind and generous to yourself, you could be there's a it's like a highly activated state where everything is like everything is just bubbling at a higher,
Yeah.
pace or whatever. You've made me look at it really different because I do think, Mark, a lot of people would think athletes and even being an athlete myself, you can even just out of the sport itself, you can find yourself in a flow state in a moment, in a space. It doesn't even have to be the whole thing. Like it's not the whole sport or whatever. It's just being in that moment where you can like lock down and be in flow. So I love this idea, Anne, and I'm going to ask you probably this last question because it you already talked about it, like how to get there. I think of it like I'm trying in my own mind to go, how could I create a little portal? Is it a word? What can like what can like snap me into my flow or what is your advice or thought on that? Because you already kind of you alluded about it, but what could be a portal?
Yeah, if you go through like, and even with your husband or even after a talk with Mark or a friend, and talk about like maybe the top 3 times recently that you really dropped into it. They could be distinctly different ones. And then have that person listen carefully and have them extract some of the words that they heard. Because sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to recognize that yourself. Like that's what I do, is what I help coach people, because I can pull it out really well, right? And then
Clearly.
like a breathing activity would be like a 5 count breath up, reset by saying your word. And so you like live it, feel it in that moment where you almost like think of me in ecstatic dance, or like all 3 of us dancing in front of TEDx. There was just a level of stoke that was pure joy. Like I'm sure each of you can bring back where you're looking at each other and smiling like, this is the best, right? And you bring that stoke. And so you breathe in for 5, you hold and you bring it to mind, and then you exhale for 5, you release what's not serving you, and you do it again 5 times through. So imagine if you're doing that on a regular basis. It could be when you're going to bed at night. It could be when your shitbird comes up, and it becomes a practice where you're firing and wiring in your mind the feelings, the thoughts, the experience that feels that way.
That's a good, that is really good advice, because it is kind of like transporting yourself into some of those places. The TEDx Portland thing will now always forever. I remember that vividly. I remember seeing the text from Teresa saying, "Oh, Mark and I are over here starting a dance party," and then all of us started like coming over there, and then all of a sudden there was just a groove that could not be contained. That whole thing was a really cool. It was that thing that you talked about, Anne. It was like simultaneous flow. We all kind of got, even people we didn't know, because there were people there that were like in our flow. It wasn't a bunch of individual people dancing. That was like, in my mind, that's a clear visual of being in a really cool, creative flow state.
Magical flow. Magical flow. I'll say this other thing that I hope everybody catches. You said this at least 2 or 3 times, and flow is not just about peak performance.
Yeah.
Flow is about joy. And I think sometimes people miss that. So thank you for raising that. You are not truly in flow if you're not enjoying your flow.
That's very meta.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love this conversation so much. Sorry that it's wrapping up to an end, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask the same question to you, because Mark, you already answered this kind of question of like, how has the state of flow changed since you thought about it? And you just described it. And so, Anne, I think I'm going to ask you that same question. I mean, you talk about this all the time, but what kind of bubbled up in this conversation for you?
I think the importance of the different layers of flow. Like I've been having a lot of these different conversations, but I'm focusing my business more on high performers, more on like businesses that want to reach that peak level. But it's just interesting to think of it at a different level and how to reach people, because I like impacting as many people as I can, not just like the top of the pyramid, right? Of what that looks like to be sharing in different ways, and just to continue the conversation, the organic conversation with people.
Yeah.
Hold on. I just got to say this because it just came to mind. And do not miss the opportunity to talk to couples about flow in their relationship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do not miss the opportunity to talk to parents and families about flow in their parenting.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't talk about the pepperonis. I just brought the pepperonis. All right. I mean, what you're doing for your children.
The pepperonis.
So I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity, because when we talk about everyday flow, like the athletes, the teams, the corporate, all of that is absolutely awesome, and you should be chasing that. I just don't want you to miss also that you are talking about flow in a way that will change people's daily lives and relationships with each other. So I had to say that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So beautiful, Marc. Yeah, thank you for wrapping that up like that, because I do, even if you choose to work with people at that highest peak performance level, I do think what Marc is saying is like, it is so valuable. You've said some things here today that do go across all of these boundaries and places that we probably most of us haven't thought about. That flow flows. I want to be so cheeky and cute. Anne, people that are watching you right now are like, damn, all right, where do we follow Anne? Because Anne is amazing. Where should people be checking out what you're doing?
Well, you can find me on all the socials at Coach Ann Rivera, Ann, ANN, no E, Rivera, RIVERA. So follow me on there. I just got my website redone last week. It is fire. It completely represents who I am now. So check that out at coachannrivera.com. Yeah. And I'm here in Bend, Oregon, and I travel. I do team builds for businesses, working one-on-one. I work with sports teams, college teams, pro teams to help the individuals like take radical responsibility for their mindset, their actions, thoughts, and behaviors, and how they can sharpen and refine themselves to access flow state more often as individuals, and then collectively as a team, and then unstoppable, right?
I could think of a couple of teams that could use you right now, Marc. You probably could too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we have to get a flow state in. So I'm going to say flow state. Then you make the sound, the unlocking sound, and then say activate. Are you ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Flow state. Activate.
Activate.
There we go.
Awesome. All right. Well, if anybody's watching out there, go find Anne, Coach Anne Rivera. I love that. That's how people can find you. It makes it really easy. And for anybody watching, if you thought, I want to be on your show and talk about something cool and unique, find us, Marc and Cathey, Marc with no K, Cathey with an E. You know, that's how we roll too, and no E, but Cathey with an E. We got all kinds of stuff going on here, and it's about to go down show.com. And thank you for being on the show. Thank you for bringing the heat. Thank you for flowing the flow. And until next time, y'all, it went down today. It'll go down next time. And we'll see you on the next episode of It's About to Go Down.